We refused to be terrified.
I did not have a thought that I would die. Even if I would die, then I wouldn't be afraid of dying.
It was about 2 o'clock in the morning when the police came to me and took me away.
I was arrested at the airport, so I knew something bad would happen.
Do you know you will get arrested sooner or later? And I said, why? Then he answered very seriously, because of your thought.
Truthfulness, compassion, forbearance. They were taking this very seriously. This is an authoritarian state. Things like this don't happen.
With courage to believe.
Faith gives people the backbone to withstand unbelievable waves of repression.
I closed my eyes and I tried to summon all my will.
This is exactly what I was forced to make, Homer Simpson slippers.
It wasn't an examination to show their health. It was an examination to see whether their organs were good for sale to foreigners. But these are human beings we're talking about.
I would do this as an American citizen because this is my right and my responsibility, because I got this, I love it, I treasure this freedom.
The world has shrunk so much today that it affects us all.
So I am here today on behalf of more than 77 million Chinese people who have chosen to quit the Communist Party and its related organizations, and the 1.3 billion Chinese who yell to be free. Free to think, free to speak, free to write, free to gather, and freedom to believe.
(1989). One man defines a nation's hope for freedom. Today, despite the facade of economic progress, China still remains a dictatorship. All media, including the internet, are censored and controlled by the Communist Party. Perhaps worse still, right now, there's a form of genocide taking place where millions of innocent people are persecuted and even killed for their organs. Hi, I'm Michael Perlman.
Hi, I'm Kean Wong. 5 years ago, when I first met Michael, he had just finished his award-winning film, Tibet Beyond Fear. And I said to him, if you want to help free Tibet, you need to help free China first. And he said to me, that's exactly what I've been saying. And that night, we shook hands and we agreed to make a film called just that, Free China.
That's right. Well, the film not only raises awareness about this illicit organ transplant trade in China, it's also a powerful story about how we can unite and peacefully stand up against oppression. After winning numerous international awards, the passionate grassroots response to this film has been amazing. And I think it's partly because people are beginning to realize that if China does not become a free nation, it will impact our own freedoms.
So we need your help still. This year, our plan is to release the film into China entirely for free. Importantly, we now have the technology to break through the great internet firewall. We've partnered with the Global Internet Freedom Consortium, developers of the world's leading anti-censorship software. It's kind of a rebel alliance, you could say, a mission to bring freedom to 1.3 billion people.
Since completing our film, we've been honored to have over 700 screenings in 26 countries, including US Congress, European Parliament, and Google headquarters.
We've also gotten the support of Nobel Peace Prize winner Desmond Tutu, who co-authored the statement, A Year for Human Rights in China, with blind activist Chen Guangcheng. So please, come join us and become part of this historic mission to bring freedom to China.
25 years on, I think the time has come to unite in solidarity with the Tank Man. Help us tear down the great internet firewall. and let's help free China. Thank you.
Thanks for your support.
For 5,000 years, a belief in a harmonious energy that flows through the universe has been at the center of Chinese civilization. In Taoist belief, this balance is known as the Way. In search of a higher spiritual consciousness, Buddha channeled the Way through acts of compassion towards all living beings. Despite the Great Wall stretching over 5,000 miles, a series of imperial forces came from the sea to overthrow the empire. After World War II, the foreign powers withdrew from China, and a civil war broke out, culminating in the Nationalist Party's defeat at the hands of the Communist Party. Chairman Mao took power and led the party on a systematic campaign to destroy traditional culture, religion, and spiritual values, turning neighbors, friends, and even family members against each other. The state eliminated anyone who did not believe the Communist Party to be the all-powerful and only voice of the people. Tens of millions were killed and starved to death. Mao declared that all power came from the barrel of a gun, and the party had all the guns. Today, despite the facade of economic progress, China is still controlled by the same ruthless regime. In their latest round of persecution, the lives of millions of peaceful citizens are being destroyed. This is the story of a former Communist Party member and a Chinese-American businessman who defy the state as they embrace an ancient spiritual practice that transforms their lives and will help free a nation.
I joined the Young Pioneers when I was only 6 years old. There's an official ceremony where everyone has to raise your right hand and make a vow to the party that you are prepared at any moment to fight for the rest of your life for the party. Mao at that time was a god.
The first impression I had about the Cultural Revolution was that my father was the enemy of the party. He was in a parade being criticized by all these crowds, shouted against my father.
As one of the intellectuals, my father was publicly denounced, and he was required by the government to admit his wrong thinking. If I could be a party member, I could rectify some of the status of my family.
To join the Communist Party, potential members undergo 1 year of observation and testing.
You are supposed to write thought reports to tell the party how you feel, why you want to join, and what you want to do for the party. I was 21 years old when I joined the party. I could have a better opportunity to get a better position in the society.
In 1976, Chairman Mao died. To preserve the Communist Party, the new leader, Deng Xiaoping, opened up the economy to foreign investment, encouraged Chinese to engage in business, and declared the new party's mantra, "To be rich is glorious." However, with more economic freedom, came a desire for democracy. In the spring of 1989, a student-led freedom movement gathered peacefully in Tiananmen Square.
I took part in some of the demonstrations.
When those people went out in the street and doing demonstrations, I thought to myself, if I participate, my name will be blacklisted for sure, then I would not be able to get out of the country.
I had a very bad feeling that the government would crack down on this.
The peaceful democracy protests were brutally repressed. The Red Cross estimated that 3,000 civilians were killed. Shortly after the crackdown, Charles escaped to America, where he conducted medical research at Harvard University and eventually became an American citizen.
I met my future husband in Peking University, and I fell in love with each other very soon. I married when I was still a postgraduate student. When I get pregnant, it's a great time. I was going to be a mother. I was going to have my own child. I didn't expect that this could turn into an accident that almost killed me. I almost died twice.
Due to complications during childbirth, Jennifer required a number of blood transfusions and took months to recover. However, she did give birth to a healthy baby daughter.
Several months later, I became pregnant again, but because of this one-child policy, there wasn't any possibility that I can have a second child. The only thing I could consider is when, where, how I can end this pregnancy.
Without a birth allowed or birth authorization coupon, a mother is forcibly aborted or fined so high that she then has a, quote, voluntary abortion, but it's anything else but.
If I were in any country where I can have a free choice, of course I want to keep this baby.
Falun Gong, also known as Falun Dafa, is a spiritual practice that began in the early 1990s. It was a return to the traditional values of ancient Taoist and Buddhist beliefs. They combine exercises that channel a positive energy with meditation and a way of living based on 3 principles: truth, compassion, and tolerance. With no active leadership to obey, no buildings to maintain, and no fees to pay, people from all walks of life joined. Farmers, students, workers, businessmen, party members, and even soldiers participated. It was a true people's movement. In 1997, in search of better health and a more spiritual approach to life, both Charles and Jennifer began to practice Falun Gong.
So we practice these 3 principles and look inward into ourselves to improve our heart nature to be a better person.
It really exchanges energy from the universe to help the good energy go inside your body and to bad energy go outside. My health improved. I felt I was living a new kind of existence. I think it's a combination of the mind, the positive thinking, and the daily exercises, because it worked at a holistic level. Life became much more easier because you only need to deal with yourself. You don't have to control others. And you couldn't control others, but you can control yourself. And by controlling yourself, those kind of stresses you had among people get away from you, and you gain this kind of inner peace and a broader mind and inner strength.
This practice spread like wildfire throughout China. When the government saw the health benefits, they actively promoted the movement.
If you took a walk in the park this morning, you can see that the recent hard work the government has put into public health activities has not been wasted. Every morning starting from 5 to 6 a.m., the city's green grass, parks and public squares become a morning exercise heaven.
Why are there so many people practicing Falun Gong? Clearly, it's because this practice is good. It's not against the policies of the party.
Things, however, were about to change. In 1999, when it was estimated by Chinese party officials that the amount of Falun Gong practitioners exceeded the amount of Communist Party members, more than 70 million strong, the government turned on the Falun Gong and declared them public enemy number one. The campaign to destroy them became paramount. All state power was employed to this end.
The minute it is perceived to surpass Chinese Communist Party membership, it becomes a major threat.
Falun Dafa is an illegal organization, and the decision is to outlaw it.
Truthfulness, compassion, forbearance. They were taking this very seriously, and they were trying to apply it in their lives, not in a monastery, in their life. This was such a different vision, and the worst was it was spreading into the military.
Bribes are the grease that keeps the system going, and it's how the party functions.
They spread superstition and hearsay, deceive the public, provoke trouble, and are ruining social stability.
I just couldn't believe a government of the whole nation, the great, always glorious party, would suddenly turn totally against something which is so beautiful, so good, which has benefited so many people. My first reaction is just, I couldn't accept it. And I thought I'd like to go to the government compound again to appeal and to ask them not to do this because this is wrong. And I also wanted to go there to be a witness that I gained a new life because I practice Falun Gong.
Now, this was big news in Beijing. I mean, this is an authoritarian state. Things like this don't happen.
Special notice as follows. Prohibit any person in any place to hand out books, video, and audio or any propaganda material that spreads Falun Dafa or Falun Gong. Prohibit sitting quietly, gathering, and demonstrating.
We behave in this way differently from the majority of Chinese people. We refuse to be terrified.
Prohibit any person to instruct others to defy the decision made by the government. Those who committed the crime will be tried under the security management law.
A law-abiding, hardworking, healthy community in your own society, and one day declaring them to be an enemy of the party, calling them a cult.
The People's Daily reports that Falun Gong is an evil cult.
Falun Gong volunteers in 18 different provinces were arrested.
Falun Gong, who have nothing but peaceful thoughts, are attacked, and yet that movement spreads.
If we could bring back those traditional values, this honesty, this trust between people, and to have this morality of the society going up, I think that's the hope for a new China. In February 2000, I was arrested for attending a gathering of Falun Gong practitioners. The police obviously wanted to find out the address of the meeting place. The police said to me, tomorrow it's the opening day for school. I can call your husband here and arrest him as well. And what can you do with your daughter left alone at home? They wanted to so-called reform us, but I didn't. So 1 month later, I was released on bail. My husband signed a bail paper for me.
To those who are temporarily ideologically unclear, we will allow them to have a period to understand and change. The party will be patiently working on thought education.
We refuse to confuse. We refuse to admit black is white, white is black. And that's why we were singled out. We wanted to uphold the principles.
The Communist Party's Big Brother tactics soon spilled over to the internet, aided by companies from the West.
Cisco built the original firewall for China. Around the time of the Falun Gong persecution, the Chinese Communist Party became very interested in controlling the internet. In fact, even from the very beginning, they started to wonder if they could use this as a surveillance tool. The Chinese were very explicit that this was going to be used for Falun Gong.
They get names. They find out who you're talking to, what you're sending.
The internet police actually intercepted a letter I had given to a friend. It was about 2 o'clock in the morning when the police came to me and took me away. One of the policemen, he said, "Do you know you will get arrested sooner or later?" And I said, "Why?" He said, "The leaders of the Beijing city at that high level already took notice of you." And I asked him why. I wasn't even a volunteer or assistant at the practice site. I was a newcomer in Falun Gong, ordinary Falun Gong practitioner. And he thought for a while. Then he answered very seriously, "Because of your thought."
All party members will universally receive the thought education in Marxism and atheism to instill the correct worldview to make the party members who practice Falun Gong leave the Falun Gong organization.
I've become a master of science. I became a party member even. I became one of the upper class of the society. But still, I ended up in the jail. The first step is get us to admit that we were guilty. One day I was called out and given this 1-year labor camp sentence. The first day we were forced to squat with our hands put like this and squat and looking at our feet, motionlessly staying like this for 15 or 16 hours under the sun until it gets dark. So 1 minute by 1 minute, 1 second by 1 second, I struggled, always struggled to keep in this same kind of position, and while our sweats just streaming down. And many elderly ladies fainted away. I almost fainted away. So I asked for a pen and a piece of paper to write my appeal. I was denied this kind of right in the detention center. So as soon as the policemen heard this, 2 of them get out, with each of them with an electric baton in their hand, just drag me out of the cell, drag me on the floor in the court, and just apply both of the electric batons on me everywhere on the body. Every time they apply the baton on me, I just couldn't help shaking. And the anticipating of the next round of shocks just was too terrible to describe. I closed my eyes and I tried to summon all my will to try to withstand this electric, shocks going within my body. And I feel the whole world is in darkness. And the whole world is collapsing right around me. And then I lost my consciousness.
How could I still enjoy my life in this country like nothing has happened? I couldn't. It's like it's a call from my heart, you know. It's something you have to do.
In the re-education stage, we will get into the specifics to politically work on the mind. Different methods will be used on different subjects.
I think by breaking away from the mental control of the party, it is a very important movement and a process of Chinese people to reclaim their identity.
The resistance that Falun Gong put up to the attempts to eliminate them began really in the prisons. At the same time, they were showing up at Tiananmen Square at the rate of thousands per day. They weren't all appearing at the same time. There were 40 and 50 practitioners to an apartment streaming in from the countryside just so they'd have a place to stay before they went to Tiananmen Square and got arrested. You can see leaflets flying up in the air, which was the standard practitioner reaction just when they were about to be caught.
The Communist Party has always been in control of the media in China. They used this power to launch a very huge media campaign against Falun Gong. A group of Falun Gong practitioners, they successfully tapped into the cable TV system and broadcasted these programs. This was the first time ever in the Communist China somebody had tapped into the party-controlled TV system to broadcast something the party didn't like, didn't want. I started to search for the methods of doing this, in this country, and then found some practitioners who knew the techniques. I learned from him. If I could make that happen in the hometown of the communist leader who is responsible for the persecution, that would be a big blow to the Communist Party leader. I did have a fiancé. I was very happy, but anyways, I had to do it because, if I just stay in this country, having a good life, I could have it, but it feels like something is lacking. I went back to China, I realized, well, totally different. It's totally different inside China. I went from the center of the TV station, search for the lines. I spent 3 days walking on the streets, looking for those things. I did them all myself. I did not want to get help from the local practitioners because that would be imposing a very big danger on them.
While scouting the area late at night, Charles was stopped by local police and arrested.
They brought me into the detention center. I observed the environment. "12 guys just surrounded me, like asking what I was doing. I was none of your business. I'm a businessman. What's going on? What did you bring me here?" I was not afraid of them at all. One guy suggested they play poker, only leaving a young guy. Those guys are playing poker inside, and later on, this guy also got tired. I sneaked where I could run into a place. There was a window open, so I climbed to the window and then climbed to the top of the building. There was like 2 steps, right? One step is to the window, and then another step, I hold on to the eaves, then I get onto the top of the building. They were trying to chase me on the side, which was a dead end. So that gave me enough time to run away. And then I go to the street and I catch a cab. I came back to America. I took a deep breath. A new generation of devices came out at that time. I must go back. Too many people's lives at stake. If we could stop this persecution as early as possible, we could save a lot of people.
Only a few months later, Charles returned to China to finish what he had set out to do.
When I went through the custom, then they took my passport and swiped against the computer. They asked me to stay aside for some issues. So I knew something bad would happen. I was arrested at the airport. I did not have a thought that I would, I would die. Even if I would die, then I wouldn't be afraid of dying. Immediately after I was detained, I started the hunger strike. I was trying to utilize this kind of situation as much as I could to let the outside world know what's really happening inside China. I would do this as an American citizen because this is my right and my responsibility, because I got this, I love it, I treasure this freedom. America is the leader of this free world, has this moral authority. It should have acted as such. I was doing the hunger strike to raise enough awareness. I use my body as a way to awaken people. Through the American consulate, the Congress made a resolution. It was very powerful.
Raising Charles Lee's case over and over again in the hopes that he would be free.
I feel like I had a heart attack and a short of breath. I was in the edge of collapsing. I saw blood when I went to the bathroom. I knew that was a point where I should stop and then continue other ways to fight. There was a U.S. consul sitting in the courtroom. I had an attorney appointed by the court, but it doesn't make any difference.
On significant cases, there's a group of judges, and they decide what the result of the case will be and what the sentence will be. And so the people who hear the evidence don't decide the cases. The people who decide the outcomes don't hear the evidence.
Charles was sentenced to 3 years in prison.
I recorded all the details, what happened to me, the trial and the appeal later, right? I want to send this to the U.S. consul, want them to send it out. The prison regime didn't want to. They took the writings I made, regarding Falun Gong, that kind of things. They took it away. They didn't want to give that back to me. I started hunger strike. They tied me up in bed, like for 3 days, nights. I couldn't move at all. They still like yelling at you like you nuts. You practice Falun Gong. Around 10 people holding me, and then they had people like stick this very thick tube into my nose. I was vomiting. The food and blood, everything coming out of my mouth.
The Laogai is China's system of forced labor prison camps. Literally meaning reform through labor, the Laogai not only serves as a tool of repression, but also as a large, free labor supply of between 2 and 4 million prisoners. It is an intricate part of the Chinese economy and has played a role in China's rise as a global economic power, second only to the United States. Both Jennifer and Charles were forced laborers in this system.
Start working from 5:30 till we don't know what time in the night. Sometimes maybe 11, 12. The majority of the labor is the hand-knitting sweaters. And in February 2000, the labor camp received an order to make 100,000 rabbits for Nestle. Because it was handmade, it needs at least more than 30 different procedures and more than 10 hours to create one piece. And the labor camp only received 5 cents, and we received nothing.
Our laws say you can't send prison-made goods that might be made by 100,000 or so Falun Gong who are languishing in the Laogai. It's big business.
All these products were all exported for overseas countries. So the police were very proud of that. So I myself made rabbits, sweaters, scarves, hats, cushions, and there were many other Falun Gong practitioners who made Christmas lights, shoes, slippers.
This is exactly what I was forced to make in Nanjing prison. Homer Simpson slippers. I saw this label inside the prison when I was making it. SG Footwear, Hackensack, New Jersey.
SG Footwear, the largest slipper manufacturer in the United States, are a total service provider, from factory selection to product delivery.
When I was in America, I watched Homer Simpson shows, pretty often during the 90s, very funny. But when I was forced to make these shoes in prison, you don't feel it's funny at all.
The United States and Canada and everybody has to say that the World Trade Organization rules are going to be enforced. Nobody is going to sell a product unless they can prove it's not made by forced labor.
Forced labor, however, was just one method the Communist Party used to exploit Falun Gong practitioners.
We were taken to a place to undergo a physical checkup, including X-ray, and had our blood drawn.
And I was refusing. What they did was they held my body. Our prison guard, just took the blood away. They did not tell me what's that for.
I didn't try to find out why. On the one hand, they torture us to death, and on the other hand, they spend so much effort, so much money to check our physical status.
It wasn't an examination to show their health. It was an examination to see whether their organs were good for sale to foreigners or wealthy Chinese.
China International Transplant Network Assistance Center had on their website, "Our organs do not come from brain-dead victims because the state of the organ may not be good."
I realized I could have become a victim of organ harvesting.
Because they don't smoke or drink, because they have very healthy lifestyles. And we've got this in the telephone conversations that we've recorded, explaining that people want Falun Gong organs. Basically saying, yes, we have Falun Gong practitioners here. Come and get them. And you can pick them. It makes you think of some grotesque restaurant where you go in and you pick your lobster in a tank. But these are human beings we're talking about.
In response, China stated, the government strictly forbids the sale of human organs. However, the Transplant Center website specifically sets out the price for organs. Human rights experts estimate that thousands of Falun Gong practitioners and other prisoners have been killed for their organs.
I mean, what does that say about the party state system in China? What does it say about their value of human life in China? What does it say about money run mad?
In the learning improvement stage, we will study Comrade Jiang Zemin's important speeches on why the CCP members are not allowed to practice Falun Dafa.
Everybody was forced to watch the Communist Party's CCTV news broadcast.
16 hours, we were asked to recite out very loudly all these regulations without 1 minute stop.
The victim will be surrounded by 15 or 20 people. Some of them are prison guards, some of them are criminals. They criticize you as you should be ashamed of yourself by practicing Falun Gong. They create an environment, make you feel so lonely, make you feel like you're so powerless because you couldn't do anything.
I just had lost my ability to think of my family. My mind was always occupied with this struggle. Initially, they didn't allow our family to visit us if we refused to give up our beliefs. And later on, when they realized that kind of policy didn't work, they changed.
My mother was severely sick. She visited me, and the prison forced them to say something. If you give up, then you could get out of the prison early. They used my parents to give me mental pressure.
They actually asked our families to visit us. Sometimes they had our family members begging for us to give up. So they worked on your emotional level to try to break you down.
They're trying to wipe out your family values.
If you think more about your family, you have more weakness point where they could hold upon you, break you down. You need to summon all your remaining consciousness, rationality, and willpower to withstand all this.
It's difficult, but it will end. I had this thought in my mind, like very firm, it will end. I would not give up.
It was too overwhelming. You just didn't have the ability to think about anything else. This is an instinct reaction of a person. You had to shut down all this so-called weakness point. I was faced with a dilemma. I developed a very, very strong desire to write a book and expose all these crimes happening around me. If I didn't reform, I would never be released. The police had made it very clear to us, even if you served your 1-year sentence, they just give you another 3-year one, 5-year one, easy.
Education will take many forms. It will be practical and effective. Learning time would be relative to whoever is involved.
It was too much, and you suddenly felt such a strong desire to be together with your family. I forced myself to write a statement to say, I will not practice Falun Gong anymore.
Following the political party is the working class's ultimate thought weapon to help change the world.
Then you had to write articles to criticize or slander Falun Gong. And then you need to go public. You need to read out your slandering articles in front of all the people in the labor camp and had that process recorded by video tapes. When Falun Gong practitioners were regarded as reformed, they were expected by the police to reform others, and especially the newcomers. I need to say why I decided to give up. I need to say after I decided to give up, what did I think? How did I feel? What did I intend to do? One couldn't imagine how hard it was. I didn't want to tell a lie. Still. And I couldn't tell the truth, of course. Obviously, I knew very clear in the eyes of these fellow practitioners, I was a traitor. There was a girl. She was sent to the labor camp on the eve of my release. She was only 19 years old. I was given a last test before I was released, so the police required me to watch her, make sure she didn't sleep. So after a whole night of no sleeping, I was right beside her. Because I knew what would happen to her after I was released. I really didn't feel any lightness or happiness in my heart because I was going to be released on that day. What's the point of me being released if she and all the others were still there?
After 1 year in prison, Jennifer was released.
When I saw the gate of the labor camp opened, the first sight I had was my husband. At that moment, I was really happy. And then the next second, I was taken by the police directly to the police station. And they told me I was supposed to help the police, re-educating others. But after this so-called reform, you don't know who you are. You don't have this sanity. My daughter left a piece of paper on my table saying, "Mom, I suggest you read this book and not practice Falun Gong again." So I had a read of that book. That was a booklet given to her by her teacher in the school. It was full of the most visual slides you could imagine about Falun Gong. Like Falun Gong practitioners were mad. They would got up in the middle night, cut open their bellies, or murder their babies, or eat their babies. She regarded her mother as part of the evil cult group, and she shouted at me. The TV said, "Falun Gong practitioners are bad." She had to make a choice between her own mother and the whole propaganda machinery of this nation.
In an internet cafes in Beijing, you type in the Falun Gong and you get nothing but hate-filled propaganda from the government.
5 days after my release, although I wanted so badly to be together with my family, with my daughter, I had to run away. I really would rather die than to be taken to the brainwash centers to use as an example of reform. The only choice was to run away again, to avoid being caught again. Police was after me. I could be arrested at any time.
If you have a battery in a cell phone, you can actually listen in on people's conversations, even after the phone is turned off.
While hiding from the police, Jennifer started writing her book, exposing the persecution.
I met an Australian couple who went to China to teach English. So I told them my story and how desperately I needed to get away from China. They sent me an invitation to enable me to apply for a visa.
Jennifer escaped to Australia, where she applied for political asylum and continued to write her book.
It was so hard. And later on, when I realized what I had really done, the real remorse was so great that I wanted to give up writing this book because I was too ashamed of myself for having betrayed my beliefs. I think the purpose for the Communist Party to reform us, part of the purpose was to break off of will. And because so many Falun Gong practitioners felt ashamed of themselves, of what's happening after they were reformed, they chose not to say anything about this. If I also did the same, I also didn't expose this. I think the worst crimes of the labor camp would never get exposed.
Jennifer's book was published and became an international bestseller. She traveled extensively to help free Charles and other prisoners of conscience she left behind. In response to the persecution, Falun Gong practitioners outside of China commenced a wide range of initiatives, including media organizations such as NTD TV and Epoch Times, dedicated to bringing accurate and uncensored information to and from China. After finishing her book, Jennifer began helping these media outlets, as well as Shen Yun Performing Arts, whose shows are raising awareness of the persecution while inspiring a renaissance in Chinese culture. Despite all efforts employed by the Chinese government, Charles never renounced his faith. After 3 years in prison, he was finally released.
I came back to this country and reunited with my fiancée. We got married. Then we had a kid. We have a very beautiful, lovely daughter.
3 years after I was released, I became reunited with my daughter again. She no longer regarded her mother as a bad person. She was reading something from the internet. So I realized she must have found out that all this thing about Falun Gong that Communist Party told her were all lies, because she had free information from the internet for the first time in her life. When she found the truth, the lies can't get hold of her anymore. She was no longer influenced psychologically by those propaganda. So that was the very, very great relief for me, for her to realize the truth and found out the truth by herself. This time, we are really reunited, both physically and mentally and emotionally. And that was the happiest moment in so many, many years. My husband actually followed my daughter. The whole family were finally reunited. So the family is important in one's life, and you support each other, and it is a place or harbor of anyone to try to find a rest, find a peace. I have responsibility to help all other families in China.
On the heels of Charles's efforts to expose organ harvesting, coupled with the publication of the book State Organs by Nobel Peace Prize nominee David Matas, a congressional hearing was held.
I want to thank Dr. Charles Lee. He has been tenacious in trying to get the Congress to focus on this important issue, and so I thank him and I look forward to his testimony.
If it were not for my U.S. citizenship and the international support of people like those in this room, I could have been the victim of the organ harvesting as well.
They would kill prisoners, mostly political and religious prisoners, take out the desired organs, and then finish the job of murdering that individual.
Following the congressional hearing, 106 U.S. congressmen signed a letter addressed to the State Department, asking that they further investigate organ harvesting inside China. In 2011, the Human Rights Law Foundation initiated a lawsuit on behalf of Charles Lee and other Chinese political prisoners of conscience against Cisco for aiding and abetting the Chinese government in their repression of dissidents.
In no country is the surveillance quite comparable to China. With the right algorithms, you can almost intercept intentions. You can find certain patterns to the way people set up websites, to the way they communicate, to the sentence structures. This is even more powerful than the words Falun Gong or democracy. This is what Cisco was talking about, really, underneath it all. And this is precisely what they became good at and what they gave to the Chinese.
China has created the Great Firewall and wants to create its own sanitized version of the internet that will essentially isolate China from much of what is happening in the rest of the world. And when protests break out, it simply shuts down the internet, as it did in Tibet and Xinjiang in recent years.
The whole world has become so tightly interconnected with each other, and we just can't afford to have 1 people out of 5 in this world not have freedom.
The Global Internet Consortium is continuing my effort to bring the free information into China.
We know that the Chinese government has deployed huge resources to surveil and to use every means of making as impenetrable as possible the great Chinese firewall. And I know that a number of very talented people, including some from the Falun Gong, who have been able to breach it, have come up with technologies that are very useful, not just for China, but elsewhere.
As they continually break through the great internet firewall, Chinese-American Falun Gong practitioners are providing millions of people inside China with an email and website where they can access uncensored, free information. This information is critical in allowing Chinese to speak amongst themselves, to be able to organize and to think without control of the state. Today, the free software they developed is responsible for up to 90% of all uncensored internet access in China. Such software is also being used in other repressive regimes and helped Egyptians mobilize themselves through Facebook to end a 30-year dictatorship in early 2011. With discontent on the rise, more than 150,000 protests occur each year inside China.
Christians, Tibetans persecuted, workers persecuted, peasants persecuted. Break away from the fear created by the party. By being fearful yourself, you are helping the government or the party to control the society and to terrify the whole nation.
Jennifer and Charles returned to Washington, D.C. to further the cause of a free China.
Free markets are no substitute for free thoughts, no substitute for free, peaceful actions.
Falun Gong would be offering some of those moral precepts that actually we want business to have. We want a transparent business environment, a regular business environment, the kind that we have always desired from China, the kind that, in effect, the whole world could get rich on.
The values of Falun Gong could well become the essential values of China.
Faith gives people the backbone, or helps them to have the backbone to withstand unbelievable waves of repression.
The regime is struggling to hold on to power by all means possible, but ultimately, freedom will prevail. We are on the right side of history.
The world has shrunk so much today that it affects us all. This is the new reality of life in the 21st century.
We will see a transformed China. It just takes time. You've got to get some money in people's pockets. That's the theory. But that if we test the theory, and if we actually look at the behavior of human rights in China over time, what we see are the trends going the wrong direction.
So I'm here today on behalf of more than 77 million Chinese people who have chosen to quit the Communist Party and its related organizations, and the 1.3 billion Chinese who yell to be free. Free to think, free to speak, free to write, free to gather, and freedom to believe.
Darkness lies in wait, lies turn fear to hate, silent feel the pain, teardrops in the flame, sleepless through the night we slave away, with courage to believe, be free, we will hold on and see. Mother, your shame, hear us, come, stand for truth, for hope reclaimed, till the end we defend, transcend. Step into the light. It's time we now unite. Voices rise, we pray. We know the way. With courage to believe, be free, we will hold on and see. Mother, your shame.